My name is Tessa Rowe, and I'm 32 years old. If you'd glanced at my life a few weeks ago, you probably would have thought, she's fine, she's safe, she's got it together. Small but bright apartment with plants that mostly stayed alive. Every bill on auto pay. A retirement account I actually contributed to, even when it meant saying no to weekend trips my friends insisted were once in a lifetime. A car that wasn't sexy, but started every single time. I didn't build that by accident. I built it spreadsheet by spreadsheet, one boring, responsible decision at a time. I was the sensible one. The friend with jumper cables in the trunk and a backup charger in her bag. The one people called. When their bank app looked like a crime scene and they needed someone to stare down the numbers without panicking. The person you put down as your emergency contact because you knew I'd actually pick up the phone. People said it like a compliment. Somewhere along the way, it started to feel like a label you slap on a storage bin. Practical, stackable, forgettable. For the last 3 years, I'd been engaged to the opposite of forgettable. Ethan Cole. We met through a running club, one of those groups that pretends it's about cardio, but is really about craft beer afterward. He was the loud one in the circle, telling stories with his whole body, making strangers laugh like they'd known him for years. I was the one stretching off to the side, calculating my pace in my head. He walked over, offered me a Gatorade like it was a peace treaty, and started talking about a true crime podcast we'd both been listening to. By the time the group moved to the bar, we were still locked into our own little conversation, two introverts pretending we weren't, or at least that's how it felt. We dated. We moved in together. 8 months ago, he proposed with a ring that made my mother cry and a speech that made the entire restaurant clap. The wedding was supposed to be in 6 months. Ethan works in marketing at a mid-sized tech company called Apex. Open office, exposed brick, cold brew on tap, the whole startup, but not really a startup anymore aesthetic. He has a whole little ecosystem there. Work besties, nemesis, office in-jokes. I only understood in fragments. He'd come home with stories about his team's drama and their latest campaigns. I liked listening. It made me feel like I had a window into his world. Sometimes he'd mention his ex-girlfriend Bianca in this casual, dismissive tone. She used to freak out if I stayed late for client drinks, he'd say, rolling his eyes. She was just dramatic. It never sat quite right with me, but I filed it away. Everyone has an ex they describe a little unfairly, right? About 2 months ago, though, something shifted. Little comments started creeping in. The kind that seem harmless until you realize they're a pattern. You're always tired, he'd say when I chose to stay in instead of going to some rooftop bar with his coworkers. You never want to do anything spontaneous anymore. If I suggested we cook at home and watch a movie, he'd roll his eyes. You know, my team already thinks you're kind of a homebody. You're not helping your case. Homebody. Serious, predictable. Boring. It came to a head on a Thursday night. I'd made pasta. Nothing fancy, but I'd splurged on fresh basil and good Parmesan. We had a decent bottle of Red Open, the kind of night that, to me, meant comfort, safety, the ordinary good stuff. We were sitting at the tiny table by the window when he dropped it. You know, he said casually, twirling his fork, everyone at work thinks you're the boring one in this relationship. I set my fork down. I'm sorry, what? He shrugged, like it was nothing. My team. They've kind of picked up on how you never come out. Like, when I say you stayed in or turned down plans, they're like, wow, she sounds fun. He laughed. They don't mean anything by it. It's just, you know, the vibe. I stared at him, feeling my pulse in my ears. So you've been complaining about me to your coworkers. It's not complaining, he said quickly. I'm just being honest about our relationship. People talk about their partners at work all the time. It's normal. There's talking about, I said slowly, and there's making your partner sound like a problem. Which one have you been doing? He shrugged again, but there was a little edge this time. I mean, you are kind of boring lately. You never want to go out. You don't like meeting my work friends. You're always tired. It's just the truth, Tess. The truth, I repeated. Or your version that makes you look like the fun one stuck with the lame fiancé? Fiancé, he corrected automatically, like the word mattered more than the sentence. And I'm not making anything up. You are those things. Something in me shifted. I looked at this man I was supposed to marry in 6 months. The man I'd been building a life with, and for the first time, I saw the gap between how I treated him in my stories and how he treated me in his. I took a breath. Good to know, I said quietly. He frowned. Don't be dramatic. I'm not, I said. I genuinely appreciate you letting me know how you talk about me when I'm not around. It's clarifying. He rolled his eyes and grabbed his phone. See, this is exactly what I mean. You're so serious about everything. I finished my dinner in silence. He scrolled, thumb flicking over the screen like nothing important had happened. After I cleaned up, I went to our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the half-packed box of wedding decor sitting in the corner. Table numbers, candle holders, a sign that said, "Choose a seat, not a side." I opened my laptop. While Ethan was in the shower, singing loudly and off-key, I sent 3 messages. One email to Megan, the coworker organizing the Apex summer party that Saturday. Hey, I'm so sorry, but a family emergency came up and I won't be able to make it to the party. I hope it goes well. Tessa. One text to Hannah, his friend whose engagement party was on Sunday. I'm really sorry to bail last minute, but something's come up with my family and I can't make it. Hope you have an amazing night and I'll celebrate with you soon. And one reply in the group chat for Friday's team happy hour, Ethan had begged me to attend. Hi all. Just wanted to let you know I won't be able to make it tomorrow after all. Sorry for the short notice. Then I closed the laptop, put it back on my nightstand, and went to brush my teeth. I didn't tell Ethan. Friday afternoon, as I was putting my work laptop away, my phone buzzed. Ethan, what time are you meeting me at the bar tonight? He asked, breezy. I'm not going, I said. There was a beat of silence. What? Tess, you promised. I never promised, I said calmly. You assumed. I sent my regrets to the organizer yesterday. Why would you do that? Because I'm the boring one, remember? I said. Why would your fun coworkers want me there, dragging down the energy? His voice sharpened. You're being petty. I'm being honest, I said. You told them I don't like going out, so I'm not going out. Problem solved. He huffed into the phone. The summer party is tomorrow. You are coming to that. No, I'm not, I said. I already told Megan I have a family emergency. Tessa, that's a huge company event. Everyone's bringing their partners. Do you have any idea how this is going to make me look? I stared at the wall. I think you'll manage, I said, especially since everyone already thinks I'm boring. Just tell them I'm at home being dull. He hung up on me. Saturday morning, he got ready for the party alone. I watched him from the bedroom doorway as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. He looked good. He always did. Last chance to change your mind, he said, catching my eyes in the reflection. Have fun, I replied. He left. I spent the day reading on the couch, going for a long walk, making myself a nice dinner. It was peaceful. There was a hole where excitement used to be, but it was quieter than the constant ache of being someone's punchline. He came home a little after 11. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? He demanded, throwing his keys onto the counter. Everyone kept asking where you were. I had to make up excuses about my fiancé ditching me. I looked up from my book. What did you tell them? That you had a family emergency, he snapped. What was I supposed to say? Oh, she's punishing me because I called her boring? So, you lied, I said. He stared at me, incredulous. Are you serious right now? Yes, I said, because you've spent months telling them I'm boring, and suddenly you're shocked when I stop showing up to prove you right. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You made me look like an idiot in front of my entire company. No, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. He slept in the bedroom that night. I took the couch. On Sunday, he tried a different strategy. He came out softer, eyes red, like he hadn't slept. Look, I was harsh on Thursday, he said. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Can we just reset? Come to Hannah's party. Please, my friends are going to think you hate them. I'm not going, I said. You don't have to lie this time. You can just tell them the truth, that your fiancé is boring and doesn't like parties. He flinched. Tess, you're ruining everything. I almost laughed at that, as if everything hadn't already cracked days ago. He went alone. Monday morning, around 10, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? Tessa, this is Robert Chen. I'm Ethan's boss at Apex Marketing. My stomach dropped. Hi, is everything okay? He sighed, and I heard office noise in the background. That's what I'm calling to find out. I need to talk to you about something Ethan said in a meeting yesterday. Do you have a few minutes? I stood up slowly, heart pounding. Sure, I said. What is this about? There was a pause. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. Yesterday, during an emergency meeting, Ethan told the whole room that you've been emotionally abusing him, and that he's afraid to go home. The room around me blurred. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My mind couldn't reconcile the words I just heard with the man who had kissed my forehead that morning on his way out the door. Sorry, I said finally. He told them what? That you've been emotionally abusive and controlling, Robert repeated, each word landing like a separate blow. That he's been scared to go home. He became very emotional when he said it. I pressed my free hand against the back of the couch to steady myself. My voice broke. I've never laid a hand on him. I don't even raise my voice when we fight. What are you talking about? I understand, Robert said quickly. Tessa, I've met you several times at company events. You've always seemed calm, stable. The reason I'm calling is because this doesn't line up with what I've seen or, frankly, what I've been told by other members of the team. Other members? There's no easy way to say this, he sighed. After that meeting, one of Ethan's co-workers, Megan, you may remember her from the holiday party, pulled me aside. She said Ethan's been complaining about you for months, not about abuse, about you being boring and unsupportive, that you didn't come to the summer party this weekend, or another engagement-related event. She said she thought he was exaggerating or outright lying when he painted you as abusive, and she showed me some of the messages. I sank down onto the couch. What messages? Screenshots of texts and group chats, Robert said. Ethan calling you dead weight, saying he wished he'd never gotten engaged, joking about how you're too dull for his social life. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I just needed you to understand the context. My throat burned. So he spends months making fun of me, I said slowly. And when I stop showing up, he covers by telling everyone he's scared of me. The silence on the line felt heavy. Tessa, Robert said, I want to be very clear about something. At Apex, we take any allegation of abuse seriously. If what Ethan said were true, we would be doing everything we could to help him. Resources, time off, documentation. But we also take false accusations seriously. That's why I spoke to Megan. That's why I'm calling you now. I don't know what to say, I whispered. I'm not asking you to defend yourself to me, he said. I'm not the police or a judge. But if Ethan is willing to say something like that in a professional setting, you need to protect yourself. Document everything. Any texts, emails, conversations you can remember, and I'd strongly suggest speaking with a lawyer sooner rather than later. The part of my brain that handled logistics kicked on through the fog. Is this going to affect my job? I asked, ridiculous even as it left my mouth. I mean, if someone looks me up and sees... I'm not broadcasting anything, Robert cut in. Right now this is internal, and HR is involved because he made those statements here. I can't control what Ethan says outside of work, but I can promise you that I will not treat his claims as fact. That's why we're investigating. The word investigating made my skin crawl. Okay, I managed. Thank you for calling me, really. I'm sorry you're going through this, he said. If you remember anything that might be relevant, or if Ethan contacts you in a way that feels off, write it down. Time, date, what was said. It might not matter, but if it does, you'll be glad you have it. After we hung up, I stayed there with the phone in my hand, staring at nothing. Emotionally abusive, controlling, afraid to go home. He'd said those words about me, out loud, in a room full of people who knew my name, who had seen my face. I tried to picture the scene. Ethan, late, dramatic, wringing his hands as he spun a story where he was the trapped, trembling victim and I was the monster off stage. I could almost hear the tone he'd use, just wounded enough to be believed, just vague enough to avoid follow-up questions. For a full minute, I couldn't move. Then the adrenaline hit. I grabbed my phone again and called the one person I knew would answer, without judgment. Erin. She picked up on the second ring. Hey you, everything okay? The question cracked something in me. I told her everything. The boring comments, the canceled events, the fight after the summer party, and finally, Robert's phone call. By the time I got to the part about Ethan telling his boss he was scared to go home, my voice had splintered into something thin and shaky. Tess, Erin said, her tone going flat and focused in a way that always meant she'd shifted into big sister emergency mode. I want you to listen to me. You are not staying there tonight. Do you understand? We share a lease, I said weakly. Half that furniture is mine. My name is on everything. I'm not just... Tessa. She cut me off gently but firmly. Leave. Clothes, laptop, important documents. You can sort out the couch and the plates later. If he's already painting you as dangerous to protect himself, I do not want you alone with him while he's cornered. If he escalates the story and says you did something physical, I would never... I know, she said. I know, but people believe the story they hear first. Get your stuff. Come stay with me for a few days. We'll call a lawyer. We'll figure the rest out. There was a part of me that didn't want to move. Not because I wanted to stay, because leaving, quickly and quietly, would make it real. But then I imagined Ethan's face in that conference room, imagined him dabbing at imaginary tears while he told them he was afraid of me, and the hesitation burned away. Okay, I said, I'll pack a bag now. We hung up. I stood up on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, walked into the bedroom, and pulled a suitcase from under the bed. I packed like I was trying to outrun a fire. Work clothes for a week, pajamas, toiletries, my passport and birth certificate from the folder in my desk, the external hard drive with all my financial documents, a small jewelry box with the things that mattered to me before Ethan, earrings from my grandmother, a bracelet Erin gave me when I turned 21. I hesitated over the engagement ring. It was glittering on the nightstand in its little dish, catching the light like nothing in the world could ever touch it. I left it there. On the kitchen counter, I took out a sticky note and stared at the blank square for a long moment. I wanted to write everything, to unload months of swallowed hurt onto that tiny piece of paper. Instead, I wrote this. Your boss called. I know what you told your team. I'm staying with Erin. We need to talk, but not here and not now. T. I placed the note next to the ring. On my way out, I paused in the doorway and looked back at the life I thought I'd be living for the next decade. The couch we'd picked out together, the half-assembled wedding favors on the dining table, the framed photo of us at a friend's wedding, his arm slung around me, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. Then I locked the door and walked away. Ethan called me 17 times that evening. The first few went to voicemail. By the fifth, my phone was buzzing so much it felt like something alive in my hand. I didn't answer. The text came next. Where are you? Tessa, this isn't funny. Robert said he called you. What did he say? We need to talk about this. You're blowing things out of proportion. I stared at the notifications popping up in real time, each one more frantic than the last. Finally, one appeared that made my stomach twist. We need to talk about what Robert thinks I said. It's not what you think. I opened the message thread for the first time. You accuse me of abuse to your coworkers, I typed, fingers shaking. What part of that is not what I think? The typing bubbles blinked for a long time. I was upset and emotional, and it came out wrong. His reply finally came. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I just needed them to understand you'd been hard to deal with lately. Can we please just talk in person? I read that twice. He didn't deny it. He just softened the language, sanded down the edges. I typed slowly, making each word deliberate. No, I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. Don't contact me again. I hit send. Then I scrolled up through our old messages. Little hearts, grocery lists, memes, plans for the wedding, a picture of the ring on my hand. I blocked his number. The next morning, I sat in a small, neat office with a wall of degrees behind the woman across from me and tried to explain how my engagement had imploded in less than a week. So up until Thursday, she summed up when I ran out of words, Ethan's biggest issue was that he thought you were boring. Apparently, I said. And when you finally pushed back by not participating in his social weekend, he responded by telling his boss and coworkers that you're emotionally abusive and he's afraid to go home. She tilted her head. Did he ever say anything like that to you privately? Accuse you of being abusive? No. I shook my head. We've had normal fights. I've snapped at him, he's snapped at me, but nothing like that. It's like he invented a whole other relationship for them. She nodded slowly, tapping her pen against her legal pad. Okay, first, I'm glad you're staying with your sister and not at the apartment right now. Second, Robert was right. You need to document everything. Do you have the text where he semi-admits to twisting things? I handed over my phone. She read quietly, her mouth flattening as she scrolled. Good, she said finally. Screenshot this, email it to yourself. Same with everything else you can think of. Your note, Robert's call, summarized in writing. Your own recollection of what happened at the dinner where he called you boring. Date everything. If this stays as a workplace HR issue, it may not go further than his employment. But if he decides to double down publicly, you want a paper trail. Can he do anything to me? I asked. Legally, I mean. If he tells people I'm abusive, he can say whatever he wants, she said. But if he makes specific, provably false statements that damage your reputation, you may have a case. I'm not saying you should sue him. I'm saying you need to understand that you are not powerless here. I swallowed. And the engagement? She looked at me directly. That's not a legal question, she said. That's a personal one. But I'll be blunt. Even if you manage to smooth this over with his company, he's shown you who he is when he's embarrassed or angry. He's willing to accuse you of something that could destroy your reputation to avoid looking bad. You're 32. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life wondering when he'll do it again? The words landed with the weight of something I already knew but hadn't said out loud. No, I whispered. In that moment, in that bland little office with its beige walls and humming air conditioner, I realized our engagement wasn't in trouble. It was over. The only thing left was to act like it. I didn't have to wait long for the next wave. 2 days after I met with the lawyer, my phone lit up with Robert's name again. I hesitated for a second before answering, my thumb hovering over the green icon. The last time he'd called, my entire life had cracked in half. Hello? Tessa, it's Robert, he said. Do you have a few minutes? I sat down on Aaron's couch, tucking my feet underneath me. Yeah, what's going on? I wanted to update you on the situation with Ethan, he said. HR has officially opened an investigation into his claims. The word claims made my stomach twist. Okay, I said carefully. What does that mean? It means, he said, that they're treating what he said as a serious statement, but not as a proven fact. They've interviewed everyone who was present in the meeting where he accused you of abuse. They've also talked to several people who've heard him talk about you over the last few months. I stared at the muted TV across from me. Erin had left it on some home renovation show before she went to work. A couple on screen was arguing about backsplash tile while my life was quietly catching fire in the background. And? I asked. And there's a pattern, Robert said. According to multiple coworkers, Ethan's been complaining about you for months, calling you boring, a drag, saying you never support his social life, that you hold him back. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Sounds familiar. That's not all, he said. Megan, the one who showed me the messages initially, provided additional documentation to HR. Texts, screenshots from group chats. In some of them, he calls you dead weight. In one, he says he wishes he'd never gotten engaged. I swallowed hard. I shouldn't have been surprised, but each new detail felt like a fresh bruise. And the abuse part? I asked quietly. That's where things don't add up, Robert said. No one had ever heard him say anything about you being abusive or controlling until that meeting. Not once. Not even in private conversations where he was venting. Several people told HR that the story seemed to come out of nowhere after you didn't show up to the events this weekend. Because he was embarrassed, I murmured. And he needed a reason that made him look like the victim, not the guy whose fiancé was tired of being mocked. Robert was silent for a moment. HR also spoke to another colleague, he continued. David. He came forward with something that, well, it changes the tone. What did he say? Last Monday, Robert said, before any of this blew up, Ethan made a comment to David in the break room. According to David, Ethan said that if you didn't show up to the summer party and made him look bad, he was going to make sure people saw the real you. When David asked what he meant, Ethan apparently laughed and said, I'll figure something out. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So this wasn't him blurting something out in a moment of panic, I said softly. He was planning to throw me under the bus before I even made a decision. It certainly suggests premeditation, Robert said. That's why HR is taking this very seriously. False accusations of abuse are not just an internal policy violation. They can have real-world consequences. I squeezed my eyes shut. I know, I whispered. There's one more thing, he added. I debated telling you, but I think you deserve the full picture. My grip tightened on the phone. Just say it. Your fiancé's ex-girlfriend, Bianca Rivera, also works here, he said. HR reached out to her because her name came up a few times in the group chats Megan provided. Bianca requested to speak off the record at first, then decided to supply documentation. My eyes flew open. Documentation of what? A pattern, Robert said. She told HR that when they were dating, Ethan would exaggerate or fabricate stories about her to coworkers whenever they fought. He'd call her unstable, crazy, imply she was overreacting to perfectly normal disagreements. At the time, she said, she felt too ashamed to push back. But seeing what he was doing to you, she decided she couldn't stay quiet. Flashbacks hit me in the staccato bursts. The casual way he'd talked about Bianca, the way he'd rolled his eyes and said she was dramatic and intense, and always making him the bad guy. The way I'd believed him, because why wouldn't I? How did I not see that? I whispered. Because you trusted him, Robert said simply. Most people don't assume their partner is running a smear campaign behind their back. I let out a shaky breath. So what happens now? Ethan's been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome, he said. Given the evidence we've gathered, his premeditated comment to David, the contrast between his long-term complaints and the sudden abuse narrative, Bianca's corroborating account, it's likely HR will find that he knowingly made a false, damaging allegation. In which case, I asked. In which case, Robert said, termination is very much on the table. There was no triumph in his voice, just tired certainty. I'm sorry this is happening to you, Tessa, he added. You didn't deserve any of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I want you to hear it from someone who's seen this from the inside. Thank you, I said quietly, and thank Megan and Bianca for standing up. I will, he said. If HR needs to contact you directly, they'll reach out. In the meantime, keep doing what your lawyer told you. Document everything. And if Ethan tries to contact you, do not engage. Let your attorney know. We hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark TV screen. I thought about Bianca. Somewhere, not that far from where I was sitting, there was a woman who had once been me, who had once believed Ethan's version of their story, because he told it first, and with enough conviction that everyone else believed it too. Somewhere in another office, she was probably reliving every time he'd rolled his eyes at her and called her crazy. To a coworker, wondering how many people still thought of her that way. And she'd come forward anyway. For me, Erin came home that evening with takeout and a carefully neutral expression, like she'd rehearsed not asking me if I was okay at the door. I'm not fragile glass, I said, watching her set the bags on the counter. You can ask. She exhaled. Okay, how are you? I laughed once, somewhere between fine and burn the world down. That sounds about right, she said. Any updates? I told her everything. About David, about Bianca, about the words premeditated and termination rolling around in HR's notes. Erin shook her head. Unbelievable, she muttered. Actually, no, it's completely believable. He always cared too much about how he looked to other people. I just thought he'd grow out of it. I thought it was just charm, I said. Charisma, the extrovert thing. I didn't realize it came with rewriting reality when it was inconvenient. Erin came over and sat beside me. You're allowed to grieve him, she said softly. The version of him you thought you had anyway, even if the real one turned out to be trash. My throat tightened. Is it weird, I asked, that I feel relieved he's showing me who he is now instead of 10 years into a marriage with kids? It's not weird, she said. It's self-preservation. A few days later, Robert called again. It was a Friday, exactly 1 week since the dinner where Ethan first called me boring. Tessa, he said without preamble, HR has concluded their investigation. I sat down automatically, my body already learning that news required sitting. And? Ethan's been terminated, Robert said. They determined that he knowingly made false accusations about you. The documentation from his coworkers, his premeditated comment to David, Bianca's corroborating testimony, there was no way to frame it as a misunderstanding. I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. How did he take it? I asked. Not well, Robert said. He threatened to sue for wrongful termination. HR's legal team walked him through the documentation we have. I think his lawyer is going to advise him to drop it, but that's his decision. There was a beat of quiet. Thank you, I said eventually, for believing me, for not just letting his story stand. It wasn't about belief, he said. It was about evidence. But for what it's worth, everyone who's met you thought his claims didn't make sense from the beginning. It did help, more than I wanted to admit. After we hung up, I stared at the wall for a while, then texted my lawyer with the update. She replied with a thumbs up and, good, keep ignoring him. Let me know if he tries to go around the block. He did, not directly. My number stayed blocked, but mutual friends started trickling into my messages. Have you talked to Ethan? He says he made a stupid mistake and HR overreacted. He's saying he was just venting and it got blown out of proportion. He's devastated, Tess. Losing his job, the wedding, all at once. Are you sure you don't want to at least hear him out? I didn't argue. I didn't send them screenshots or launch into an explanation of premeditation and documented lies. I just wrote, over and over. Here are the facts. He spent months calling me boring and complaining about me to coworkers. When I stopped going to events, he told his boss and team that I was emotionally abusive and he was afraid to go home. HR investigated and found that he'd planned to make me look bad in advance and had done something similar to his ex. That's why he was fired. That's why I ended the engagement. Some of them responded right away. Jesus, I didn't know it was that bad. I'm so sorry. Others went quiet. A week after Robert's last call, I got a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I saw the area code. It was the town where Ethan's parents lived. I answered cautiously. Hello? Tessa? A woman's voice asked. It's Chloe, Ethan's sister. I closed my eyes for a second. Oh, hi. I'm so sorry to bother you, she said quickly. I just needed to talk to you. Is that okay? Something in her tone, soft, strained, made me nod, even though she couldn't see it. Yeah, I said. What's going on? I've been talking to Ethan, she said. Or, more accurately, he's been calling me non-stop, trying to get me to convince you to take him back. Of course he has. I told him that's not my job, she continued. So I asked him to tell me exactly what happened. Not the HR is overreacting version. The real one. It took a while, but he finally admitted it. I sat up straighter. Admitted what? That he lied, Chloe said, her voice breaking. He told me he panicked when his coworkers started asking where you were, that he'd been embarrassed you didn't show up and wanted them to feel sorry for him instead of judging him. So when Robert pulled him aside after the meeting and asked if everything was okay at home, he just made up a story where you were the villain. I stared at the wall. It was one thing to hear it from HR, another to hear it from his sister, filtered through whatever lonely rationalizations he'd offered her. He said he didn't think it would go that far, she rushed on. He thought people would just pat him on the back, I guess, tell him he was strong. He didn't think about how serious the words were, or what it would do to you, which frankly is still unforgivable, but it's not your job to apologize for him, I said quietly. I know, she said, but I'm horrified. I always liked you, Tessa. You were good to him. You didn't deserve any of this, and I feel like I should have seen it coming. He's always been obsessed with how people see him. I just never imagined he'd go this far. A strange mix of emotions welled up in me. Sadness, anger, an odd, distant pity for the girl who'd grown up watching the boy I was supposed to marry turn into this. You couldn't have stopped him, I said. He made a choice. Lots of choices, actually. Months of them. I know, she exhaled shakily. I just wanted you to hear it from me. That he admitted it. That he knows he lied. It should have felt like vindication. Instead, it felt like confirmation of something I'd already accepted. The man I thought I was going to marry did not exist. There was just Ethan, the real one. Thank you for telling me, I said. Really. If you ever need anything from me, a statement or something, I'm here, Chloe said. I told him that too. That if this ever somehow turned into a legal thing against you, I'd side with the truth, not with blood. My throat tightened. That means a lot, I said. After we hung up, I sat alone in Aaron's living room, listening to the refrigerator hum and the faint traffic outside the window. Ethan had lost his job. His reputation at work had crumbled. He'd been caught in his own lies. And somehow, I still felt like I was the one picking shards out of my skin. It took nearly 2 months for my life to stop feeling like a crime scene. Not the dramatic kind, with fingerprints, detectives, and caution tape. The quieter kind. The kind where the damage is invisible, but everywhere. My new apartment was a 1-bedroom downtown, smaller, older, slightly crooked in places, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture inside it had been carried through the door by someone who loved me. Aaron, her fiancé, 2 of my closest friends. All women who didn't ask for explanations or replays or reasons. They just showed up, hauled boxes, and made space. There was something cleansing about that. Leaving behind a couch, chosen to match Ethan's idea of a minimalist aesthetic. Leaving behind plates we'd argued over in Target. Leaving behind the ghost of who I'd been when I thought getting married meant becoming less of myself to make more room for someone else. I didn't realize how small I'd made myself until I was living alone again, until silence didn't feel like punishment, but relief. Ethan didn't contact me directly after the HR investigation wrapped up. I'd blocked his number, and apparently he wasn't stupid enough to violate that boundary in a way that could be documented and used against him. But the ripples came anyway. Mutual friends sent updates I didn't ask for. He moved back in with his parents. He can't get a job lined up. His old company won't give him a reference. He's been telling people he ruined his life with one mistake. I didn't reply to most of those messages. When I did, it was short. I'm not involved anymore. I hope he gets help. Because I meant it. Not forgiveness, not softening, just clarity. Hurt people, sure, but Ethan wasn't hurt. He was humiliated. There's a difference. And humiliation behaves like wildfire, fast, irrational, and devastating to anyone standing too close. 3 weeks after I moved into my new place, he reached out through a mutual friend who acted like a buffer, a messenger, a shield. Ethan wants to apologize in person, she said carefully. He promised it would be respectful. No pressure, obviously. I thought about it for a full day, not because I missed him, but because closure, spoken out loud, felt like the last broken piece I needed to throw away. So I told her, one public place, daytime, 30 minutes max. She relayed it. He agreed. That's how I ended up sitting at a small corner table in a quiet coffee shop, hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup, watching the door as Ethan walked in. It startled me how different he looked. Weight loss from stress, shadows under his eyes, shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who had finally met the consequences he always believed he was too charming to face. "Tessa," he said softly as he reached the table. He didn't try to hug me, didn't reach for my hand. Just sat, folded his fingers together, and stared at them. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. I nodded once. "You said you wanted to apologize, so say what you need to say." He swallowed hard, looked up, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel anything for him. No longing, no heartbreak, no nostalgia. Nothing. Just distance. "Tess," his voice cracked. "I'm sorry for all of it. For calling you boring, for making jokes about you to my team, for lying, for saying those things about abuse." He took a shaking breath. "I don't know why I did it. I panicked. I was embarrassed when you didn't show up this weekend and everyone kept commenting on it, and Megan made some stupid joke about how my fiancé must not think much of me if she didn't want to come. Everyone laughed. And when Robert asked me later if everything was okay at home, I don't know. The words came out. I didn't think." I stared. "You didn't think," I repeated. "You accused me of something that could have destroyed my life." He flinched. "I know," he whispered. "I know. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just telling you what happened. I felt judged. I felt small. And I lashed out in a way that I can't believe I did. I didn't expect it to go that far." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You never think anything will go that far, because the consequences never used to stick to you." He blinked, and I watched the truth land. "You said I was controlling," I said, "that you were afraid to go home." "Ethan, those words don't just disappear because you regret them. Even if everyone at Apex knows they weren't true, that accusation is still out there in the world, attached to my name. Your words created that." A tear slipped down his face. He swiped it away quickly, like even now he didn't want to be seen crying. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "Yes," I said gently, "you did." He froze. "I could maybe forgive the boring comments," I said. "I could even forgive the months of complaining about me to your coworkers. But lying about abuse? That's a line that can't be uncrossed. Not for me." He nodded slowly, like his body was absorbing the blow in segments. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to hear me say it." We sat quietly after that, two people who had once shared everything, now sharing nothing but a small table and the faint hiss of the espresso machine behind us. When our time was up, Ethan stood first. "I hope," he cleared his throat, "I hope someday you meet someone who deserves you." "I will," I said simply. He gave a faint, broken smile. We hugged, not as ex-fiancés, not as lovers, but as two people acknowledging the end of something they'd once believed in. Then we walked out the door in opposite directions. A week later, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it until the text followed. "Hi Tessa, it's Bianca. Robert gave me your number. He said it was okay. Just wanted to say, I'm glad you got out sooner than I did, and if you ever need a statement from me about Ethan, I'm here. Also, you're not boring. You're steady, and that's rare. I hope you never settle for someone who makes you feel small again." I stared at her message for a long time. Then I typed, "Thank you, truly." I meant it. Bianca and I never met in person. We didn't need to. We were connected by the same invisible scar, a reminder of how far someone will go to maintain a spotless reflection, even if they have to dirty someone else's name to do it. Life didn't snap back into place after that. I didn't wake up one morning magically healed or confident or whole. But piece by piece, something shifted. I joined a book club, started going to trivia nights with Erin and her friends, picked up photography again, the way I had in my 20s before I'd convinced myself it wasn't a practical hobby. I rediscovered silence as something gentle, not accusatory. I learned what it felt like to take up space without apologizing for it. And slowly, the version of me, who had shrunk herself to avoid Ethan's eye rolls, started to grow back into someone who laughed louder, lived bigger, and didn't flinch from being seen. Sometimes I found myself almost grateful. If Ethan hadn't said those words, "Everyone at work thinks you're the boring one," I might have walked into a marriage with someone who fundamentally didn't respect me. Someone who needed to dim me to make himself shine. Someone who believed attention was currency and that he was allowed to lie if it kept him rich. But he did say them, and now I'm free. Starting over at 32, yes. But starting over as someone who knows exactly who she is. Someone who